What's going on today, YouTubers? Welcome to another edition of Walking Reviews. Today we're going to be taking a look at a production knife. This is new for, it did come out in 2016 I believe, but they're still pretty hard to find. This is the ParaMilitary 3 by Spyderco. And obviously a sized down version of the ParaMilitary 2, which is a smaller version of the paramilitary, or the military rather. So let's go ahead and jump right into the specs. We have a blade length of right around 3 inches. Spyderco has it listed right at 3 inches. I measured it at a little bit smaller than 3 inches, like 2.96 or something like that, which I guess would technically make it legal in places where you need a sub 3-inch blade for carry, but it's so close to 3, I get why Spyderco listed it at 3. It's made of CPM S30V, which you don't see on too many new production knives since S35VN hit the market. It is the classic paramilitary clip point, full flat grind, pretty good slicing profile, really great for piercing cuts if that's something that you need. It's got the grinder satin finish, Spyderco mark. All of their 9 different logos for, you know, where it's made and blah blah blah. This one's made in Golden, Colorado. So I mean, if you are familiar with the Spyderco ParaMilitary 2, you're pretty much familiar with this knife. Obviously the ParaMilitary 2 being a little bit bigger, and this was supposed to be the more EDC friendly version, and I guess a lot of people wanted that, but well, let's keep going with the specs. Handle length is 4.3 inches with really nice grippy G10 handle scales. It's got stainless steel liners, obviously with the famous Spyderco compression lock, which is just a reverse liner lock. Nice beefy stop pin, lanyard tube, and your standoff there. We've also got the 4-way adjustable pocket clip. So let's go ahead and get into why this knife, what do I think about it, etc. I know that this was a much requested knife by paramilitary fans of the Spyderco ParaMilitary 2 and the original paramilitary. See, that's I'm gonna get into that. I don't necessarily agree with the need for this knife after they made the Sage with the compression lock, the Spyderco Sage. I don't know if it's 6 or 5, I forget. But they did make the Sage with the compression lock, which is, in my opinion, for this size, a whole lot better of a platform for the compression lock. The thing about the ParaMilitary 2 is it had a 3.5-inch blade, so when you got the forward finger choil and the giant thumb ramp on the back, it gave you enough cutting edge to still make it a useful EDC knife. Whereas this, the utility suffers quite a bit from the lack of actual cutting edge. On a 3-inch blade, a full third of it almost is taken up by the forward finger groove. You really don't get cutting power till about there. So that's all you're left with when it comes down to what are you going to be cutting with. Now for a lot of people that's going to be enough. So that's one issue that I saw with it. Another, ergonomically the knife is fantastic. I know some people were saying that they missed the ParaMilitary 2 because their hands were kind of sliding off the edge. I guess if you're not choking up to the forward finger groove, you could run into that problem. I'm still able to get, I mean, it's on the edge there, but I'm still able to get a 4-finger grip and properly use the thumb ramp on here, which, by the way, the jimping on these things is always great. Some of the best jimping out there. So what does that make this knife then? It was marketed as a more EDC friendly ParaMilitary 2 for people that wanted something smaller. But when it comes down to pocket footprint, you're still left with that weird profile of the ParaMilitary, which this is a very wide knife. The giant thumb ramp and the shape of the handle makes this just about as unfriendly to your pocket as the ParaMilitary 2. It's one of those knives where if you put it in your jeans pocket, you're probably not going to be able to fit much else in there. It's not super thick. It's decently thin, probably about average, I'd say. But as far as width goes, it's pretty wide. And again, for what you're getting, which is that, you know, maybe 2.4 inch cutting edge, do you really want the rest of the knife to take up that much real estate? So that was kind of my main issue. The smoothness is okay. I never was a big ParaMilitary 2 guy, so I don't know if this is normal. Like, it doesn't, there we go. It doesn't really stick or anything, but it's not as easy. Like, I had a really easy time flicking out the, see, this one isn't even fully locking. I had a really easy time flicking out the Sage with the compression lock. This one, like, I can't really do. I have to really, like, flick it as hard as I can, or else it won't fully open up. But I'm not an expert on the ParaMilitary, so maybe it just needs a little bit of loosening. It's pretty tight now, the pivot, and there is maybe a millimeter of side to side. So maybe I need to, well, I guess you can't adjust the stop pin at all. Who knows? I'm sure there's somebody out there who could tell me how to make it so that there is no side to side play and it's still smooth. Maybe it just needs to break in more. I've only been using it for a few days. So what are we left with when this stacks up against the compression lock Sage? I don't know that this does anything better. I guess maybe, yeah, it's got a finer tip if that's really something that you absolutely need. But other than that, ergonomically, I think the Sage is just as good, if not a little bit better. It's not any wider than this thing. It's probably about the same, but you're getting more cutting edge on the Sage. In my opinion, it was a little bit easier to use the compression lock on the Sage. It was easier to flick for me anyway. Yeah, I don't know that this does anything better than the compression lock Sage, other than look like a ParaMilitary 2. So if you're a huge fan of the ParaMilitary 2 and you want a smaller version of it, I get wanting this. But if you were just thinking about an EDC and you like the idea of the compression lock, I would probably suggest going with the Sage, the compression lock Sage. And I'm going to keep saying that because I completely forget if it's the 6 or 5. So yeah, kind of a maybe too little too late on the ParaMilitary 3. If they had released it before the Sage with the compression lock, I might have a different opinion of it. But being as there is that model, I don't know that this would ever really have a home in my pocket. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Oh, I forgot to mention the weight, 3 ounces, so very lightweight as well. That's going to do it for this video. As I fail to flick it out once again, I will see you on the next one. I got a ton of videos I got to get through, so stay tuned.